So welcome to Landmark Learns. I am Kim Hildebrandt and I work at Landmark School. Landmark Learns is a webinar series that we do. It was really designed as parent education, but we certainly have plenty of professionals that are also joining us. But really our audience is for parents. And this is actually the fourth in a series that we've been doing. We kind of do these Landmark Learns kind of winter, spring every year. So this is the last one, and we hope that you'll stay tuned and join us next year. So on the next slide, I'll just recap a little bit of some of the different Landmark Learns that we've already done. You can, with that QR code, go and find recordings and resources of all of our previous Landmark Learns, both from this executive function series and from previous series. So we've done executive function, the basics. We've done executive function for work and executive function for home. So when Rachel gives her presentation today, something to know is she'll do like a brief definition of executive function, and then she's really going to dive into tons of tips and strategies. If you are looking to get more of like really like the foundation and basics of what executive function is, I would highly encourage you to go to that www.landmarkschool.org/landmarklearns or scan the QR code. And you can go back and watch those previous recordings. You'll also find we did a series on dyslexia, the science of reading, navigating the post-secondary process. We have tons of resources on that page. And it's just part of Landmark's mission to put out that information. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about some logistics for tonight. We will send out recording and some resources. Give it like 24 hours for us to get that put together. It'll go to everyone who registered for this Landmark Learns. It will also sit on that Landmark Learns webpage, so you can find it there. If you have questions, please just put them in the Q&A, and Rachel will be stopping every once in a while to answer questions, and then at the end there'll be a few minutes for questions. And then if you need closed caption, you can turn that on in the resource section of Zoom. All right, so let me just tell you a little bit about, on the next slide, Landmark School. So Landmark School serves students in grades 2 through 12. We serve students with dyslexia and other language-based learning disabilities. We have kids that come from all over the country and the world. And at our high school program, we have a boarding program, so we can take kids from all over the place. And we really work on that literacy remediation. We have small classes. We have an individualized tutorial that really focuses on reading, writing, executive function. And then, these students want to be able to do all the normal fun things that you would do at school. So we have really great, robust activities, great athletics program, performing arts, things like woodworking, visual arts, that's great STEAM lab. And then we also have a summer program. So if you either have a child or have students that could use some support but maybe can't do it for the school year, we have a really great summer program. Our elementary middle school summer program is a 5-week program. And then our high school summer program is a 4-week program. And that high school program also has a boarding option. So it can really be like a sleepaway camp. They do like some academics and remediation in the morning, and then they have really great activities in the afternoon and evening. So it's a really fun time. As you can see by the picture, we're right on the ocean. So it's a beautiful place to be for the summer. And then on the next slide, not only do we have Landmark School, we also have this arm called Landmark Outreach, which does professional development and coaching for educators. They have online classes and they work directly with some school districts. So we have consultants that go into school districts and really help train so that teachers in their districts can also be empowering students with dyslexia. So that's a little bit about Landmark Learns and who Landmark School is. So Rachel's gonna take it away and she'll introduce herself and has lots to say to you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you, Kim. That was a lovely introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Rachel Cassola. I can't see any of you, but I'm here, and I know there's plenty of you, so please feel free to jump in the chat or the Q&A with Kim. I really appreciate you coming, and I'm excited to kind of talk about something I'm really passionate about, which is executive function at school. So I am an academic advisor at Landmark High School. I've been at Landmark for 7 years, so this upcoming fall will be my 8th year. As an advisor, I work with students. I also teach in the study skills department. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about that as well. So during the school year, I'm at Landmark. And then during the summer, I actually run what's called Skills Plus, which is a 2-week summer program, where we talk a lot about executive function, foundational study skills. We'll talk about the organization of time, managing your materials, managing your information. There's a lot of reflection. So it's 2 weeks this summer. We're accepting registrations up until June. So the 2 weeks are July 14th to July 25th. So it's a Monday through Friday, 8 to noon. So I'll touch base a little bit more about that at the end of the program, but it's an awesome, awesome 2 weeks. And it's for students ages incoming to 6th grade all the way up until incoming 12th graders. So I kind of section based off of age. So that's a little bit about me from Beverly. I grew up here, and I love what I do and where I work. So I'm gonna kind of dive in a little bit, but feel free to kind of ask away if you need to. So as Kim mentioned, this is a series of executive function, and there were a few other programs that have already webinars that have already run, but this one's going to really focus and hone in on executive function at school. So I imagine most of you have children that are in elementary school, middle school, high school, beyond. So it's important to note that executive function is really something that doesn't stop when your child leaves the classroom or the school. It's executive function is really, we talk about it, cognitive skills to kind of organize and execute tasks, manage your time, gather your materials, create a syllabus, turn in assignments. So we're going to talk tonight a little bit about creating some strategies to put in your executive function toolbox, that your child can take with them as they continue, into a new school or a new grade. So a lot of the times we talk about executive function, kind of the metaphor of the musical conductor of the brain. I think this one's kind of interesting. Not that I can do this, but your executive function really helps all areas of the brain. So this is really when we work fluidly, like the conductor has to kind of, get the symphony going and move with this group and move with that group. Your brain is really trying to do all of those things. So initiate a task, find, start your homework, find all your materials, turn in the assignment on time, write the email. So similar to kind of a conductor that's trying to, get the email going over here while still getting your homework done, while making sure you shower and put your shoes on, to go, get ready for school. So that's kind of a metaphor that I think of that executive function encompasses. So at Landmark, this is our kind of formal definition of executive function. So it's really the brain's ability to coordinate cognitive and psychological processes needed to initiate, sustain, monitor, and adapt the behaviors and attitudes required to achieve a goal. So that goal might be a research paper, or that goal might just be getting one assignment done on your assignment notebook that night. So I think what's important about that is it's the toolbox. It's really what you put into it and the strategies that you continue to work through. And I imagine that most of your children have different needs and different motivations when it comes to school. And I think what will be kind of important tonight is that we're going to talk about strategies, hopefully that they can all relate to in some capacity. Patricia Newhall's awesome. She wrote the language-based learning teaching series, which all Landmark faculty, when they become a teacher at Landmark, they use that book to kind of guide them to learn executive function strategies. So it's a little background about executive function, and how we define it here at Landmark. So this is like the meat and potatoes here. This is where I get really excited. So we're going to talk about executive function at school, and we're really going to hone in on 3 different sections here. So I try to call this TMI. to help students remember this. So in my classroom, when I'm teaching study skills or in Skills Plus, when we're kind of breaking down what executive function is and how can we stay organized, we talk about study skills being the organization of time, T, materials, and information. So I think what's helpful is to remember that acronym of TMI and that we're really trying to create strategies to organize our time, our materials, and our information. So I'll kind of get into this a little bit more. Specifically, the time is going to be yellow, materials will be green, and then the information piece will be blue. Okay, so when we're talking about executive function, as I mentioned before, initiation is really, does your child want to start their homework? Do they have trouble initiating that? Do they need a few prompts when they're in the kitchen? Would they rather be on their phone, or would they rather be with their friends or watching TV? Or maybe they're just, I don't know, doing something for a longer period of time to kind of avoid starting their homework. It also we talk about self-regulation. So how do you kind of regulate your time and regulate getting your work done? We'll talk about prioritization, putting things in order from the most important to least important, time management, self-monitoring, checking, how long you're doing as an assignment. Is it really to the best of your ability? Or are you trying to get through this quickly because you just want to go watch TV? The flexibility piece, organization in general, goal-directed persistence, and the working memory piece, which is really holding that information and manipulating it to remember it. So not just looking over your notes once, but let's create some strategies where we're going to retain that information for a longer period of time so it sticks in here. So we're talking about time. We're going to talk about a few different strategies, but one we really hone in on at Landmark is the time awareness piece. And I think this is really important, especially as students begin to have more assignments or longer assignments and more in-depth work, but really thinking about how long is a task going to take you, and recording how long it takes you and then reflecting on that. So, for example, I do this in my study skills class when we go through the time management unit, but this is happening kind of elsewhere within Landmark as well. I have students in their assignment notebook. They're writing down what they have for math homework, what they have for study skills, for reading, for language arts. And we go through and I'll say, Johnny, how long do you think it's going to take you to get your math homework done? And I'll say, Miss Cassola, okay, 20 minutes. So I'll say, okay, write down 20 minutes. How long do you think it's going to take study skills, etc. So we kind of go through and estimate how long students think they're going to take for each assignment. And then what I like to do is, and this is really like, ideally, this is an assignment that works well, is when they actually go home to start their homework or do their homework, that they time themselves and they, take out their phone or some type of a stopwatch. And when they start that math assignment, they're starting the stopwatch. And then when they're completing the assignment, they're looking at the stopwatch and they're like, oh, this did take me 20 minutes, or this took me 2 minutes, or 45 minutes. And it really opens up that conversation because then the next day in class, we've talked about like, so why do you think it took you 2 minutes? Do you think you put in as much effort as you should have for that math assignment? Or why do you think it took you 45? Were you pulling out your phone? Or were you going to the bathroom? Are you doing something to kind of avoid what you're doing? So I think it's super important for them to think about how much time a task takes. I think sometimes our students don't really recognize time, and how long it takes. I think this is a huge component of executive function, because a lot of the times I'll have students, and at Landmark we have some students that live on campus because we're a boarding school, as Kim mentioned. We also have students that commute pretty far. I have a few students that have about an hour commute, hour and a half with traffic. And sometimes we actually put that time into the time awareness piece of like, well, how long are you in the car? But when they get home, it's 6 o'clock, they're doing their, when they get home kind of routine piece. And then they're not starting their homework till about 7 or 7:30. And then they say that they're doing their homework till 11 o'clock. And I like to kind of think about like, well, what was going on from 7:30 to 11? And is that accurate? So try this with your kids, like have them show you their homework and estimate how long do you think, maybe just try it with one assignment to start. They might tell you, mom or dad, like 10 minutes, and then maybe have them actually start the timer, see how long it takes them, and not to rush them through it, but really just to kind of start building in like, okay, that actually did take me 10 minutes. Okay, that means I must have put the right amount of effort into it. Or, oh, that took me 2 minutes because I rushed through it to get it done. So time awareness is something we really try to talk about and think about at Landmark and in Skills Plus as well. probably wondering why there's a frog on the screen. I was showing somebody at work today these slides and they were like, what is the frog doing there? I promise there's a purpose to this. So this is a prioritizing activity and strategy that I teach in Skills Plus as well as teach at Landmark in the Study Skills department. But really eat the frog. The point of this is really, if you had to wake up one day and eat the frog, just get the hardest thing done. If you had to, hypothetically, if you had to eat a frog, that probably for most people would be the hardest part of your day. Um, so when it comes to assignments or things that you don't want to do, make a list of the tasks that you need to complete. Maybe it's your homework, and number the tasks by most importance. So is it the science test that you have tomorrow, the research paper that's due in 2 weeks, or is it the reading for, I don't know, study skills class that's due in 2 days? Maybe write those three things down and then number them. What's most important? What's second important, and what's kind of the least important thing that maybe you can get to next week. Maybe it's that research paper because you have a little bit more time. Um, but really eating the frog, I think when we do this in Skills Plus, a lot of students will say like, it's math homework or it's this. And I sometimes try to do this, like sometimes eating the frog relates to the executive function at home too. Maybe it's like cleaning your room. I don't know how often you're asking or telling your child to do that. So this could go for something like that too, but because we're honing in on kind of the EF at school piece, eat the frog, get it out of the way. A lot of the times I find that students don't eat their frog because it's typically the hardest, most challenging and time-consuming part of their afternoon. So that's homework, or that might be a specific teacher or class that they're not super excited about, or it's the most challenging. I try to talk with the students too about my job. I have to write IEPs and reports, and sometimes I don't follow my own advice, and I should just eat the frog and write the report because that's not my favorite part of the job, but it certainly kind of takes up the most time, and when it's over with, it feels good. So that's kind of why the frog, we're not actually eating them. But in Skills Plus, we do a whole activity on this, and students get to color their frog and name their frog, and it kind of becomes this kind of fun activity for them while also trying to remember what is the point of the frog. So another strategy is task analysis and long-term planning. So I think about this a little bit more in high school students who are kind of maybe working through, like I mentioned previously, a research paper or a long-term assignment. Sometimes our students that have some EF difficulties struggle with breaking down an assignment. Um, a lot of the times, and I'm sure your child maybe has a syllabus that they're working through where they have a calendar of Monday's going to be this, Tuesday will be this, Wednesday this, or they might have a syllabus that just says the research paper is due on April 22nd. Get it done while also, trying to encapsulate all the other pieces that come with being a high school student and other classes. Um, so I think it's important to break the assignment into parts, kind of go back to that time awareness piece of estimating how long each part will take. So if you're writing a research paper, are you finding your sources? Okay, that's step one. Then you have to read your sources. Okay, how long is that going to take? Maybe start with the longest article first. Um, and then maybe it's writing the draft and editing the draft. So using a calendar to record what you will do each day. I'm actually doing this with a student right now in our one-on-one tutorial, or helping him with. He's in a seminar class and he has a syllabus, but he's really benefiting from breaking down. When do I need to do this? Okay, I had baseball last night. I got too overwhelmed. I stayed up too late with my friends. I need to kind of reset, look at my calendar. And tonight, I'm going to pay for the not doing the homework last night and have about an hour of this to be done. So kind of breaking this down and thinking about estimating that kind of time awareness piece. So procrastination and hidden time. I'm sure procrastination is something maybe you've talked about with your children. I am human. I procrastinate myself. I'm not perfect. Um, but when we talk about time, the study skills organization of time, procrastination can be a big piece of that, especially with phones and TikTok and all the things that we have right now. It can certainly hinder getting our work done. So some strategies to kind of beat that is what the kind of slogan I use, is the 5-minute rule. So set a timer for 5 minutes. And this can go for working and for a break. So if your student is, or your child is struggling with, they're on their phone or that you're there, I keep using phone, but maybe they're grabbing a snack, or maybe they're just really just trying to do anything but homework, or work for class. have them set a timer on their phone or with the stopwatch and have them work for about 5 minutes. When that timer goes off, they can break. That break might look, like just getting up and taking a walk. Maybe it's water. Maybe it's just grabbing a snack at the fridge and coming right back to their seat. I have incentives here, so build an incentive for when you complete a task. Maybe that's like a Hershey Kiss or a phone break. I get a little worried about that just because the phone break can turn into much longer. So sometimes what I tell students is if you're going to use the 5 minute rule, your assignment, then you need to use the 5 minute rule for your incentive for your break time too. So try not to let that break continue for much longer. And then all of a sudden it's, been 20 minutes or so. And you're like, but so I think using a timer to get your work done and then also using that timer to build in that break time. Routines are so important. So having set location and time to do your work, we're going to talk about this a little bit in the organization of materials and kind of workspace. But really trying to have your child do their homework in the same place, typically around the same time. I know there's a lot of busy schedules of sports and activities. Um, but I think building in that routine where they know they have their pencil, they have their agenda, they know where to put their backpack. It's kind of a distraction-free environment as best as possible, and kind of building that in. And a routine could also be using that 5 minute break piece every or 5 minute work strategy every night. It also doesn't have to be 5 minutes. It could be 10, it could be 15. It really depends on your child and what they need. And then the last piece that I have here is hidden time. So we talk about taking advantage of hidden time. So as I mentioned previously, I have some students that commute to Landmark from all different parts of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And obviously, the car is maybe not the best place to get work done, but if you're flipping through flashcards or you're at the dentist and you're waiting for about 20 minutes or so, that's called hidden time. Time that you're not really, you're not home and you're not at your desk getting your work done or you're not at school in class. But you do have some downtime where you're in the car or you're waiting for something, or maybe you're at soccer practice for your sibling and you have 45 minutes to kind of sit there. Trying to get some of those small tasks done instead of, maybe them being on their phone or doing something else. So that's what we call kind of hidden time, time that they don't really realize they might have. Okay, we're moving into the agenda books. The time section is, I think, kind of the longer one. So agenda books are super important. At Landmark, we have what's called an assignment notebook. So most of our students try to use that. It's a paper-based planner where they can write down their assignments, which we'll talk about a bit. But this is really breaking down pretty, pretty clearly and specifically the best practices for using an agenda book. Sometimes my students call Sunday scaries because they're like, "Well, Miss Cassola, I have a whole week of school and all of this work, and like I'm freaking out." And I try to follow this as best as I can. So on Sunday night or Sunday at some point, I know sometimes if there's weekend homework, that's when students try to do it. But making sure your completed task from the past week and preview the week ahead. So anything that's going on, this doesn't even have to be homework. This can be soccer practice at 5 on Monday, dentist at 3 on Wednesday, school dance Friday. Just looking at your agenda and like looking at the week. Oh, right, we have a half day Friday. The post-secondary fair is happening this week. And then during school, in their classes, writing down their homework and assignments at the end of each class period. So keeping that agenda somewhere easily accessible in their backpack, bringing the agenda to school, step one, making sure it gets there. And then at the end of the school day, review your planner and make sure you have something written down for each class. So if there isn't any homework, write none. And I'm talking to you, but to your child. Make sure the materials that you need are at home. Schedule time with your teacher if you think you need it. I think one of the biggest pieces, and I see this a lot in my classes, if students don't write none, they sometimes will then email me, which is great. And I'm glad they're advocating. Miss Cassola, I don't have anything written down tonight. Did we have study skills homework? And I always appreciate email. I think advocating is so, so, so important. But if they had written down none, okay, they can check that box off and they can know, period one, they have math, period two, they have study skills, period three, they have language arts. They wrote down at 9 a.m. this morning, none. And when they go to do their homework at 8 o'clock, that's almost a 12 hours of school and practice and all the things. There's a chance they could forget what we did in class that day. This also goes for, this isn't on this slide, but writing down just Google Classroom as the assignment. I just put a big like, please, no, no, no. I always try to do this as a teacher. Like if there is an assignment that is on Google Classroom, making sure your child writes down specifically what the assignment is. I think a lot of the times they'll have students tell me like, but I wrote down classroom, but I couldn't find it. So being as specific as possible when they're writing their assignments down is incredibly crucial. Like I said, there's just so much time that happens between even the last period of the day until when they do their homework. And it's so important. I know I have some students that will say like, I'm gonna remember. And I say like, that's great, but the best practice would be to write this down because there is a chance that you may forget. And writing down Google Classroom, you have 5 other classes on Google Classroom. There's a lot going on on that platform. At home, plan your homework time. So estimate, again, kind of going back, we're kind of spiraling back to that time estimation, how long each assignment will take. Number your assignments by priority. That's that eat the frog piece. And do the hardest first. That's easier said than done. I get that, parents, but I promise I think that will help your child's success with their homework and their kind of nighttime routine. And then the last piece of the agenda books is before bed, check your agenda. Did you miss anything? Pack your bag with everything you need. This goes for like sports stuff and clothes and all of that for the next day. But the agenda and the assignment notebook is so incredibly crucial. We talk a lot about that at Skills Plus as well as in the classroom at Landmark. So this is kind of, I broke this down a little bit, so I don't need to necessarily go through all of these. I kind of had it all in one slide here. End of school, home, and then before bed. So that kind of wraps up my spiel on time. So if you remember correctly, we have TMI, so we have 2 more sections, but are there any questions? And I know Kim was maybe going to check in about questions.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. It doesn't look like we have anything right now, Rachel. Those are such helpful, really like specific, concrete things that parents can be doing at home with their kids. Um, so let's go ahead and move on to your materials.
Um, Thanks, Kim. Okay, so thank you. So TMI, this is going to be the materials section. So again, study skills is the organization of time, materials, and information. So we're going to talk with materials, paper-based, backpacks, but also kind of electronic, email, Google Drive, Google Classroom. So the first piece is the better binder system, and this is a strategy that we use at Landmark, and I also we do a whole unit on this in the Executive Function Skills Plus summer program I previously mentioned. So this is a system that is forever changing. I think with digital age and Google Classroom, this is always going to be changing, but the purpose of the better binder system, and I'll get into it a little bit, is really to organize your materials as best as you can with a few different strategies and avenues. So the everyday binder is one binder with dividers for each class. So that has everyday materials, hence the name. It has the homework for the night. It has the study guide for the test tomorrow. It has a math divider, a study skills, an LA, etc. So everything that's current. It's really only keeping that current material. And you bring that to, or your child will bring that to their class and home. So that goes to class. That's kind of like the traveling best friend along with the assignment notebook. So that's your everyday. The reserve binder, so this might look like an accordion or a binder. So it kind of like has a bunch of flaps in it. So this will be a folder or section for each class. So this is where you save tests, quizzes, and reference material you may want for exams. So typically, what I just did this actually in my study skills class because we just started a new unit this past week. I had them all move they were doing debate stuff. So we finished debate. They moved all of their debate materials from their everyday binder to their reserve binder because they're not currently working on that. And really they're reducing clutter for their everyday binder because I'm sure your child has plenty of papers that, they're in the backpack, they're out of the backpack, they're going here. So reducing clutter, and it just makes it easier for your child to really find that material. And we pull that reserve binder back out before things like finals and midterms. So if they have a cumulative exam, that reserve binder is going to be incredibly important as they look through old material that maybe they haven't gone through since, January or December. So every day comes to class, it's current, reserves, that typically stays in the classroom or stays somewhere that's, your kid doesn't have to bring that to and from class. And then lastly, the digital reference folder. So this could look like a Google Drive folder, which we're going to get into in a few slides. But this is material you want to reference for later, reference sheets, templates, and maybe some of your best examples of work that you want to bring with you to portfolio or to middle school or high school, depending on how old your child is. So this might look like Google Drive, which we'll kind of talk about. So that's kind of the three binder, better binder system. Um, so digital files, I don't know if this is like your child's best or worst like piece. I know I definitely teach some students that really thrive when it comes to digital organization, and then some students that really need a lot of support. So I think one thing that I don't know if most of your children use Google Classroom. At Landmark, we use Google Classroom as kind of our online platform, and then we use Canvas for the seniors that are transitioning post-secondary, to kind of help model what that might look like for them. But in Google Drive, I think it's incredibly important to create a 2025-2026 school year folder, and label each folder. And if you really want to get crazy, color code, and have the name of the class within each folder. So labeling and color coding is so important. Untitled documents are crazy, and there can be so many of them. And half the time when I ask a student, do you have this in your drive? And they look through untitled documents, it could take us a long time. So titling documents is so important. And then organizing them into a specific folder is also so important. I try to model this as best as I can with my students so I can show them like, okay, Mrs. Cassola 2025 school year, study skills, debate. Um, I get that this can be kind of a lot and that this might take you and your child a little bit of time, but I encourage you to check their Google Drive folder, and see what it looks like. If there are title documents, the Google Classroom that they have that usually creates a folder in Drive itself. So that can get a little confusing, but really just titling their documents and labeling folders and putting them in the correct folder is really important. This gets so specific that it has the class, title of assignment, the name of the teacher, and the essay. Like that gets really specific. I think what works for your child will be great, but I think just labeling it and putting it in a specific folder is going to help them, instead of just creating a new doc, not titling it, and then turning it in. That can get just a little messy, when they try to organize some of their things. Which brings me to email. And I don't know how old your children are, if they use email or not. But I know I'm sure in this webinar, use email frequently. I know if I didn't check my email, that would be not good for my job. I do what's called an electronic scavenger hunt in my class some days, where I'll put like on the board, okay, check your email. I want, like, tell me how many unread emails you have. And some students have 3 and some have 350. And I teach ninth grade, so I understand, some of their emails, they're not checking them yet, and they might not understand like the importance of that. But in your inbox, trying to keep only the emails you need to respond to or that have information about tasks you need to complete. So at Landmark, students might, have JV baseball canceled because we've had a lot of rain here. That's an email that they might want to read, or maybe their advisor needs to check in with them, or a teacher, that's important. But global emails that maybe don't necessarily relate to them, try to have them delete those, because they end up adding up and adding up and adding up. So kind of junk mail, anything they're getting from other, maybe not even the school, but other places, deleting. And then put emails you need to refer to later into the appropriate folder. Again, I don't know how frequent, your child is looking at their email, but a lot of the times, even if, teachers are absent, they might email the class. And sometimes I'll say, like, did you guys get my email? I was out sick yesterday. And they're like, no. So getting them into the habit of even just looking at their email is so important, and then trying to organize it as best as they can. So deleting them. I think this also goes for emailing itself. Like, writing a professional email is important, creating a subject and heading and all that. But because this is really talking about organizing materials, take a look at your child's inbox, see what it might look like if they allow. I don't want, but I think you'd be surprised to see there might be a lot more in there than you think. Okay, so I kind of touched on this a little bit, but talking about the workspace. So we just talked a little bit about digital files for the organization of materials, and now we're going to talk a little bit about productive workspace. I, for one, I don't work from home usually, so I'm like currently in my bedroom. I'm probably not in the best workspace for myself, but I tried. I think this is incredibly, incredibly important for our students, their success. So consider privacy, quiet, distraction-free, roomy writing service. It's whatever it's kind of inspires you, room for materials, good lighting. Um, I try to, what I've done in my class before is a raid of different adults on campus and their workspace, which is hilarious because some adults need some help as well. Like I said, executive function doesn't go anywhere when you leave the classroom. But I think what's cool is to see like how do other people work? Do they have their materials out? Do they have lighting? So a lot of the times I'll ask the students, where do you do your homework? Do you do it in your bed? Do you do it at the kitchen? Do you do it in your bedroom at a desk? Like, where's the best place and why do you think that is? Typically, students do their homework in the same place every night. So I'm imagining that your child probably does. I can see the kitchen being a great place, but I also know I'm one of four children. So when I was younger, the kitchen was a very busy place and loud place. So I think it's just so important that when your child goes to sit down and do their homework or their assignment or something at your house, in your home, consider the privacy and the quiet piece. Some students at Landmark, like they put their phones with an adult. I've been on coverage in the dorm and they've asked, like, Miss Cassola, can you take my phone for 20 minutes? I really need to be productive and get this assignment done. And I'm like, absolutely. So if that's something that you're interested in, but really that and building in that routine so they're doing their homework in the same place every night is important. And the lighting piece as well. I think sometimes students get like comfortable in bed, but that's really where you're supposed to be sleeping and relaxing and not getting your best work done. So that kind of wraps up the materials piece. As I mentioned, that was a little bit quicker than the time. Are there any questions or?
Thanks, Rachel. I cut everyone off too early last time. We had a ton of
Oh,
questions.
oh,
So
okay.
I'll ask some questions from kind of the time section as well as the materials section. One of the questions was just about like, what does an agenda book look like? And if you go to the next slide, this is not the best example, Rachel, but maybe it didn't load in.
No.
Um, oh, sorry, it's on my end, but maybe not yours. Sorry. I We can send one out. If you could just describe maybe what an agenda book looks like and kind of
Yeah,
how parents maybe might find one.
sure. Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. They're typically spiral bound, and the assignment notebook I'm referring to from Landmark is I love it, but I this is what I love about my job. But it has Monday, like a full column for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And students can put the name of the class and then their assignment. There's a chunk of space for the student to write their assignment in there. What I like about Excuse me, I'm just going to cough for a second. Excuse me. What I like about the assignment notebook from Landmark is that students write in the date too. So it kind of encourages, not forces them, but it encourages them to be like, oh, what's today? Okay, today is Wednesday, April 9th. I need to put that up at the top. Every week for my study skills class on Mondays, we flip to a new page, we write down the date. Okay, it's Monday, April, what was yesterday? The 7th on Monday, 8th, etc. So again, it's a spiral bound notebook. And the one, at least from Landmark, you have to write in each date. I know there are some that you could find at Target or Amazon that might have the dates already in there, which might be better for your child. But I kind of like the idea of having them write in their assignment and the date themselves. So
Right. And I think one of the key things too is just making sure it's a planner that has enough space for them to do the writing that they need to do. So like it should be 1 week per page, not the whole month kind of thing. Um, and then we had some questions. We had a couple questions kind of all centered around homework and this idea of how much homework is too much homework, or what if your student is also struggling with some slow processing, and so homework is taking a long time and they're easily getting discouraged. Um, how do we help kids navigate that kind of overwhelm of homework?
sure, that's a great question. I think that that's happening more and more frequently. I know at Landmark, We try to say it for our ninth and 10th graders, about 20 minutes of homework per class a night. And I don't work, at the school that your child goes to, or maybe I do. But I know that trying to do, if your child's doing a math homework for a little bit longer than, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes, and again, depending on how old they are, I don't want to speak for all ninth grade or if you have students that are elementary school, but I think if they're spending at least 20 to 30 minutes on an assignment and they're starting to feel like frustrated or struggling, I think it's okay to then like stop, break, and kind of like reset and then be like, I think, did they try their best on this assignment? Did they spend a good chunk of time on that, maybe with your help, maybe without help? And then I would move on to the next assignment. I don't know how strict teachers are about getting the entire assignment done, but I also find that students, they like lose some of their motivation after that half hour, 45 minutes, especially if like Kim had mentioned their processing is slower or if it's taking them more time. So I know our kind of rule at Landmark, or what we use, is 20 minutes of homework. And if it's taking you a really, really long time, email and advocate to their teacher. So again, I don't know if that's something that your child could do, but I certainly think it's worth a discussion with the teacher if it's taking your child longer than you think is probably appropriate for that assignment. So I hope that kind of answers
Great.
the question.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. That's super helpful. While I'm asking this next question, can you just go back one slide? Someone had wanted to see this slide a little bit longer. And just so all the participants know, we will be sending out a recording sometime tomorrow. So if you registered for this webinar, you'll get the recording so you can obviously go back and watch through at your own pace. So the last question I'll ask for this section is just how do we help build autonomy and independence? They asked specifically about with the better binder system, and I'm gonna add to that question another question that was asked, which is this idea of like, if I have a high school student, is it appropriate and should I be sitting down with them to help them get their folder set up? And then I'll go back, and then also like, how do we then build that autonomy with our students?
These are great. I think I'm gonna answer the second one first, just because it's like more fresh in my mind. I might need to have you repeat the first one, Kim. But I think it's okay to sit down with your child and help them get that folder and get them ready. I think building that in is crucial and important. And when I don't know how that looks if they're like fighting with you to do that. But I don't think it's the worst idea to like start with that, and then if it becomes routine, I think that's a good thing. And then they can start doing that, and like, or maybe if it's something that they aren't enjoying that you're sitting with them, maybe be like, okay, well, I'll sit with you tonight, but like if you can do this without me prompting you, like I'm happy to be hands off. I'm excited for you to kind of work through that independence. I think it's okay to give them that self-talk of like, you're in high school, like you can do this. And remember that like as you continue in high school, typically there's going to be more homework that happens next year or more assignments. So right now we're really trying to build that foundation of like what's going to work best, because this is only going to kind of build on each other as you continue in high school or beyond. And as far as the autonomy with the better binder system, I think students struggle with the better binder system for what it is. I think each class might be kind of different. So sometimes a science class might have a mat, like a big binder, and they don't use that every day, reserve and reference. But I think the more that we define the purpose of why we're using it, so really reducing clutter, taking things out that we're not currently using. I know in my Sunday skills class, sometimes we'll open the everyday binder and there's like science stuff in some kids and math in others, and I'm like, this is not my like. So I think as much as maybe they're not loving it, if we continue to build the purpose of why we're doing it, reducing clutter, helping you find your assignments, if it takes your child 10 to 15 minutes just to get the homework out, think about how much that could be reduced if they just knew where that assignment was and how quickly they could retrieve it. So again, defining the purpose. I think it's okay to sit with your child, and just kind of build in that routine until they start to feel like, okay, I got this. I'm going to do this on my own. And good luck. I know.
All right. And I think I'll add to that, Rachel. I think if your child is struggling with organization and you're trying to use something like the Better Binder system, um, just helping like build in some time for them to do it, because it takes time to do it, right? You have to carve that out to get it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, I should have like this all I have all these like strategies, but this is going to take time and that's okay. And these are a lot of strategies that we talk about at Landmark a lot and we build in a lot, but it takes a lot of time. So that's okay. It should take time.
All right. So Rachel's going to have one more section, and then we'll have one more kind of Q&A at the end. And so take it.
Thank you, Kim. And thanks for all your questions. That's great. Okay, so the last piece of the study skills executive function at school is information. So this really talks about test taking, writing. There's a lot of different strategies here, but we'll kind of talk a little bit about them. So one thing we really talk about at Landmark and in Skills Plus is active versus passive learning. So on the slide here, we have for all academic tasks using active strategies to helps the information stick. Active reading strategies, so involve engaging, manipulating, organizing. So this might include margin noting, which is reading a paragraph and then putting a main idea, which is a complete thought or sentence on the side of like in the margin, and highlighting the details. Two column notes, so very similar to margin noting, but actually taking the information from that article or that reading and putting the main idea on the left-hand side and then the detail on the right-hand side. So instead of highlighting the details and writing the main idea on the margin, you're just putting them in two different notes, not two different columns. Web notes, so kind of creating different webs, mind maps. I know a lot of students that are kind of more artistically inclined prefer this way of studying and actively learning. Outlines, and then summarizing, kind of putting all the pieces into a summary, and then SQ3R, which stands for survey, question, read, recite, review. So you're reading, you're previewing the text, you're kind of surveying through it, you're creating some questions about the text, like what is this about? What does this mean? And then you're going through and actually reading the text, looking through it, and reviewing it. I like when I talk about active versus passive, when I first started working at Landmark and learning about active and passive, somebody gave me this example and it really stuck with me. Like if we're talking about watching a movie, if we're actively watching a documentary or a movie, we might be taking notes, we might be asking questions about it. We're engaged, we're listening, we have thoughts, opinions. If we're passively watching that movie, we are sitting there with the popcorn, just kind of eating the popcorn and letting the information kind of pass by, which ultimately, like if you're watching a movie and you're doing that, that's okay. But same thing goes for a lecture or a class period. And I always tell students, it's okay, like if you have a few moments where you're passively kind of sitting there like, whoa, I'm exhausted, I have a lot going on. But we really try to motivate students to actively learn. And that could look like asking questions. That could be being confused and like following up after class. So these are some examples when it comes to note taking, but I really think when we think about active versus passive, think of active as you're engaging with the text or with the information to help it stick. And the passive piece is kind of letting the information pass by you. So maybe you're kind of daydreaming or you're just kind of sitting there, but it's not necessarily going to stick. So some other active study strategies, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, flashcards, Quizlet, so creating flashcards in Quizlet, not just finding them online. Stoplight studying. So this is a study strategy that my students and we do this a lot before a test or a midterm, but stoplight studying is kind of getting out all the material that's going to be on the quiz and going through, or the test or the midterm, whatever it might be, going through what do you feel really confident about? What do you feel really good about? Okay, that's going to go in the green pile. Like I feel great about these two things. They're going to go in green. That's why it's stoplight. Okay, I'm not super sure about this section. I'm gonna put that in yellow. That's kind of my unsure. Like I feel okay, but like I definitely could review. And then the third piece is the red, which is like SOS, I need help. I need to look at this. I need to make some flashcards and review this tonight. So that's what we try to organize so that way kids aren't looking at every single thing that's going to be on the test tomorrow, or next week or whenever the test might be, but they're organizing like how do they feel about it? Okay, feel really good about this section, that's green. Unsure, I'm okay, I'm slowing down a bit, that's yellow, and then red is I need some help. And maybe they need to meet with their teacher, or maybe they missed notes because they were absent. One page reference sheet, so creating a reference sheet with information, formulas, again, diagrams or web notes, study groups, so working with each other and kind of talking out loud, that helps build that active and kind of activates the brain. creating your own quiz. So sometimes I do this with my students before they have a quiz. I'll have them for homework create 5 questions that might be on the quiz and answer them. Um, and a lot of the times I'll take some of those questions and actually put them on my test to kind of help them. And then one strategy that I think a lot of your students or your children would probably benefit from is a brain dump. So I typically do this a few days before a test. But writing down all that you can remember and then look back at your notes and figure out what you don't know. This also kind of goes with the stoplight studying. So, like, if I give students 10 or 15 minutes to write down on a piece of paper all the things that they can remember that are going to be on the test, that's great. And then they kind of go back and think, like, oh, I definitely had this, and this. That's green. I missed this, and this, and I even forgot about this. That's going to be on the red. So, those are some study strategies as we kind of think about organizing information. And then the 5-step writing process. This is something that we do at Landmark. So when your child has an assignment, whether it's an essay or a research paper or a 2-page composition, we try to organize this. And I kind of use the acronym POWER, POWER, because the first step is plan or brainstorm. So make a list of what you're going to write about and then create an outline. A lot of the times at Landmark and Skills Plus, we provide the outline for the student. I'm sure your children have outlines that they use in their language arts class or their writing classes. So they're planning, they're brainstorming, they're outlining and organizing their thoughts. Then they're actually writing a first draft using some of those templates to kind of benefit from. And then they're going through and editing or proofreading. This is helpful if they peer edit. So they might switch their paper with their table partner, or maybe they have another teacher read it. This past week, I had a student ask me to read her essay for a class and kind of edit through it. And then the last piece of the 5-step writing process is revising. So correct errors and turn it in. Like really look through. Somebody had proofread it. Let's review it. I think reading the assignment out loud is really helpful. A lot of the times our students struggle with proofreading. I think sometimes they want to just get their essay done and then be like, okay, I'm done with Cassola, it's ready to go. When really they could benefit from previewing it, reviewing it. Grammarly is great. The whole piece of spell check. But I think reading it out loud is certainly helpful. So again, this is a bigger process. This takes a long time. Um, but this is another kind of way to organize their writing and their information. I think that's my last. Yeah. So any questions as it relates to it's kind of a lot of information.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been amazing. If people want to put any questions in the Q&A, I do have one here I'm going to ask while I'm waiting to see if there are any others. Okay, so Rachel, here's a question for you. So how do you teach students um, how to focus on like what the main ideas are so that their active notes aren't just like a word for word transcript?
Yes, this is so important. Paraphrasing. Which this skill we work on throughout. I had a meeting today. We were talking about main ideas for seniors and like working through that. It's crucial that your children and students and that teachers are teaching this, that they're paraphrasing what's in the paragraph, because obviously it's not their own words. And if they are going to write word for word, they need to make sure they're citing that. So I would say I define main idea as the most important part of the paragraph. So I'm actually reading a book with my study skills class right now, and we are doing a book log. So part of the book log is creating a main idea. So we're doing a main idea per page. So we read a page, and then I'll ask the students, like, okay, there was kind of a lot in there. What was the most important part? Okay, it's that Maya is going to a deaf school. So write that down. And maybe you're writing it, Maya attends a deaf school. But I think what's the difference between main ideas and details are really that main ideas can stand on their own. They're a complete thought or a complete sentence about that paragraph or that page. And the detail is that kind of specific piece. What deaf school does she go to? Where does she go to school? And those kind of help support the main idea. But again, I think main ideas they're a lot harder than they seem. I know I just kind of like listed them off, like find the main idea, write it in the margin. But that takes time and practice, but paraphrasing is so important.
Great, thank you. As I'm asking this next question, will you just put the previous slide up? I think it's on the 5-step writing process. Yeah, so someone I just wanted to look at that. And then my question or the question is about Google Drive. I'm going to read this one. It says, are we saving the documents that they find in Google Classroom or is it from their binder and they can scan it? Um, I guess I'm not entirely sure what that question's asking if you, but maybe the idea is like if they have documents in Google Classroom, should they be doing with all those documents? They're likely not printing them out and putting them in a binder, right? Those can stay
Yeah,
digital, right? You
yeah,
don't need to merge digital
no.
and printed.
No, yeah, that's a good question. I would say digital stays digital, printed is printed. I know some teachers love printed and only use printed, and some are the complete opposite. I'm a mixture of both. I think I think when we're talking about Google Classroom, that's separate from Google Drive. So if a student, I think what I try to do is, as much as I like using Google Classroom, and I think it's an important and organized format, there's value in our students knowing how to create a doc, label a doc, and put it in a folder in Google Drive because Google Classroom will eventually end when they leave high school or Landmark or wherever they are. So I know students are like, is it on Classroom? Is it on Classroom? I probably get that like at least a few times a day. And a lot of times it is, but I think what's important is that they can separate the two. There is Google Classroom, but Miss Cassola is running that and she's a teacher and that's where the assignments are. And I also have my own Google Drive, which I need to manage, organize, and title my documents. And that will come with time.
Mhm.
I don't think many underclassmen are really doing that at this point in middle school, but it's important because my Google Drive is so important. And if it's disorganized,
Mhm.
I'm spending about 10 or 15 minutes just trying to find what I'm looking for. So
Yeah, we have a great resource that you touched on about like how to organize your digital materials. And when we send out the email to all the registrants with this recording, we'll also have some of those resources. So be looking for that as well. Rachel, if you want to go through, and I don't really have any other questions right now. Oh, well, this is a quick question that someone just came in, and then we'll wrap up.
sure.
Someone just asking, like, when you're talking about a template or a graphic organizer, like, what does that mean? Like, when there is a template for outlining, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and then this could be for a few different things. I teach the study skills piece, so I don't teach the five-step writing process except in Skills Plus we do that, but this is typically in a language arts class. But a lot of the times we'll have the intro paragraph, and maybe it has like topic sentence, detail elaboration, and those, and then conclusion. So that's really a template for like a paragraph. So those students are writing in their topic then their detail, and then they're elaborating on their detail, and then another detail, and then they're elaborating. So a lot of the times this is done digitally. Some teachers print it, some teachers do it digitally and have students, upload and do it right on the computer. But I think they're trying to mirror what an essay is going to look like, but a little bit more formatted. I know some teachers at Landmark do a really nice job and even have it color coded. So maybe the intro is red, and then the body paragraphs are green, and then the final conclusion paragraph is yellow. But it's really a way to our students can kind of sequence and look at information not just like a big blob of text that's on a page. Because a lot of the times
Yeah,
when students hear like 2 pages, what do you mean? That's so much. If they just break it down, it's doable and it's possible. And then for the template with note taking, a lot of the times it can vary, but a lot of the times we talk about main ideas and the left hand margin and then some details in the right hand margin.
great. And again, we have a whole host of executive function downloadables, and some of those are templates for things like the five-step writing process or those two-column notes. So you can be looking for those in your email. Um, Rachel, did you have a few last minute things you wanted to say?
I think if I just wanted to kind of again kind of plug the Skills Plus program if that's something you're interested in. I'll go back. I have or I'm
Uh,
gonna
if you go forward, yeah, there you go.
um so again, Skills Plus is the 2 week summer program. It's the half day program. I mentioned this at the very beginning, but I know I've done a lot of talking since then. And it's really focused on a lot of what I've presented here. It's for students that are in grades incoming 6 all the way to 12, but again, they're housed in different classes. There's typically two teachers per class, so and they're landmark teachers. They're awesome. They're enthusiastic. There's a snack midway through the day, so they get a little break, and then we end at noon, so they're free to go to their lunch, to the beach, grab lunch, whatever they need to do. It's kind of like I call it like a crash course in like all the things that we just talked about. And the goal is really so your child can take some of these strategies with them wherever they are going to school in the fall. And I think what the beauty of a lot of it is that a lot of students are in a lot of different places. We have people from Florida. Last year had a lot of different people from different parts of the country. And they can talk about like, I do this in my class. Oh, we do this here. I've never heard of this. So there's a lot of multimodal reflection building. So I'm the contact person for that if you have questions or follow up.
Great. And if you go to the next slide, just some last minute resources for you guys. We do have a couple different guidebooks that Landmark has put out. We have a dyslexia one, a reading one, and then we just released our executive function guidebook that kind of follows along with this webinar series we've been doing. And you can find and download for free all of those guidebooks on our website, and you can use that QR code as well. And then the very last slide is just a reminder that Landmark Learns, all the resources and recordings will live on the Landmark Learns website. But if you registered for this webinar, you'll also get an email with the link to the recording and the resources. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. And I hope that you got a lot out of it. Thank you so much, Rachel, for taking the time and sharing so many wonderful things with us. Have a great evening, everyone.